Right, will we go for it?
Then, yeah. So I don't know if I should turn my camera off or not. Hopefully I'm not sounding too, that congested, yucky way, sniffly. So hopefully not. I've been out and had some fresh air today. So yes, I will try my best. I might start coughing. I've got a horrible dry cough, but we'll get there. As always, just a really informal session. Feel free to turn your camera on. Feel free to come in at any point. You don't need to wait, put hands up or use the chat. There's just a few of us, a few settings. I'm not sure how many's in each of the settings that's joined there, but there's just a few. So I'm sure we can manage, and we won't all be talking over each other. So this session 3, is where we look at our setting culture. So that's where we're sort of thinking about we've got our strategy already, okay, so we know, or we're working on it. We might not have it already, but we're working on it. But we know sort of what we want for our setting. We know what we want digital technology to be able to provide, to be able to create, to be able to support us with. We've got our plan, we've got our setting improvement plans, and rather than adding to it, with even more actions, we're going to use technology as drivers to try and help us meet some of those actions. And in this session as well, this is where we really talk about knowing our why. Okay, it's like why we're doing what we're doing, and it's about us like all working together and growing together. I said at the start, it's great having a digital leader, but if we want this to be really sustainable, let's break up all the tasks so that if staff do move about, for whatever reason, that things don't just stop. And it can be really difficult to do that because you are spinning so many plates. But if we can sort of work together that way, then that means that whatever we're putting in place is going to continue. So the sort of subheading for culture is digital technology is used throughout the ELC setting where appropriate, and we've spoke quite a lot about that already. Sometimes it won't be appropriate for whatever reason. You might have children that are overstimulated by, certain sounds, certain lights, certain screens, things like that. And it's okay to say, actually, no, we're not a digital first setting, but we take a considered use or a considered approach to using digital technology because we know our learners really well and we know what works for them. And just now you might not know that because you might be at the start of your journey and it might be a bit of trial and error. You might want to try different things in different areas to see how the children respond. And then it's about really working together and thinking about, why might we offer, lights over at the music area, or, why might we consider drawing apps or programmes on the screen when we've got loads of lovely art materials, what would be added here? And again, you might not know until you try it. If, it wasn't doing, great things, if, the children weren't particularly interested in it and you thought not getting much more engagement out of the sort of hard concrete materials over at that area or wherever you're at, things are peppered throughout your setting, then, that's fine, you've tried it. For some children, it might be more sort of visually stimulating for them. Some of the different programmes can give you glittery sort of crayons, or they make a little sparkle sound, when you are map making with them. And for some, that might be a wee hook in, that's something, that they really respond to. And I think we spoke last time as well about sort of fine motor and gross motor skills, so some of the apps that you might be trialling, or some of the mark making different programmes that you might have access to, will tick your fine motor skill development. Whereas if you're doing it on a bigger screen, and it could be the exact same thing, but on a bigger screen, you're then working your gross motor skills. So yeah, lots of trial and error to see, what the children respond to. We also think a lot every session and in every section of the framework about their safety and security. Okay, so the only, or one of the sort of main pieces of feedback that I'll offer when settings submit their strategy is just go back through each area and think about cyber resilience and internet safety. Okay, so as a culture, you're all sort of singing from the same song sheet, that first and foremost, the children's safety, comes first. So risk assessing experiences, thinking about the content that you might be about to expose children to, thinking about how you are storing content that you're creating, making sure that it's somewhere secure. You're part of Friend Through, you're part of the local authority. So I'm assuming, Pam, that that's all kind of covered, and you'll do your sort of annual mandatory training where you cover things like data protection and things like that. But it wouldn't do any harm to have a wee look into some of the resources that I'll show you shortly about cyber resilience and internet safety, just so everyone's really clear, and it's a message that you're supporting your families with as well, because there can be conflicting views. I think I've said this before already, but what we might think is appropriate, might not be appropriate to another person, or there'll be families with older siblings that children in the nursery are maybe sort of getting a wee bit of exposure to things that content that isn't appropriate for them. And although we can't really lay down the law, I suppose, about what happens at home, we can advise. So if we've got that knowledge up our toolkit about different tips and pieces of advice that we can give our parents, then that's going to help inform them to make better decisions. And even things like language and communication as well. So, role modelling and during stay and play and things like that, that when the children are using, say, a screen-based device, that they're not sort of using it passively, that there's always someone there, explaining or asking questions, or just like you would do anywhere else. There's always someone there, just making sure that they're getting the most out of what it is they're doing, and that the opportunities there for developing language. So some of the things you might consider for gathering evidence for your setting culture, and a lot of the things we've seen already. Okay, your strategy and improvement plan, the link could go in there. How do you work with other schools as well? Okay, have you got any evidence that shows that you work with other schools digitally? What about when you're engaging with your parents? So what's an example here? Okay, so it was just support for our new parents to access their online learning journals. Did anybody need a wee bit more help with that? What are the accessibility functions and tools that we've got access to? Just making sure that we all knew they were in existence, so that we could support families that maybe had English as an additional language, or really benefited from read aloud, an audio rather than the reading the text. What else would show our culture? So we mentioned stay in place. Any bits of feedback, anything that you capture from your sort of daily or weekly, or whatever events you've got going on, but make sure that in there the parents are getting a bit of experience with what it looks like in your setting, what digital technology looks like in your setting. Maybe even when you have an open day, and have different things set out to show them what digital technology actually is, and that might take away some of the sort of fear around screen time, especially if you're showing them the sort of things that the children are engaging with on the screen as well, and that it's not all just they think, like I've told you before about the parent that thought the Promethean panel was a 75-inch television, and the children were all getting to watch television all day. It's those busting those myths, I suppose. That's what we're seeing. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this. I won't go to that right now, but I'm going to come back to the evidence just after we've had a look at some more examples here. Okay, so we've mentioned that the award has been designed to support ELC settings. So a lot of emphasis here is on outdoor play as well, because that is the nature of early learning and childcare. So about the open-ended experiences or opportunities to learn with and through technology, practical and creative. So I've got a couple of examples here of the slightly more practical. So the photograph there up on the top left, that's a little digital thermometer. Not one that you would use to take your temperature, but like one that takes the temperature of the air. And in that setting, there was a child that had a heart condition. And if the temperature dropped, below a certain degree, it meant that that child's body wasn't able to keep them warm. So they would need to go back inside, even though, they were all wrapped up and whatever, that was just part of the care plan. And so instead of having a member of staff, clock watching and then telling that child, it gave them so much more independence having the little thermometer, because then when it beeped, they knew and everybody knew, and that child was then, able to go inside. The bottom left there, we have a wee simple step counter. You can pick these up, fairly cheaply. It is an adult's one, but, if you pull it down tight enough, it does. It fitted round the child's wrist. They were using that while they were on an outdoor walk in their sort of wee forest schools area that they were in. But then I also observed them that day doing all sorts of different things in the garden. Like if they walked backwards, did it still count their steps? If they jumped, did it count their steps? If they hopped, if they took big steps and little steps, what was happening? So much numeracy learning going on just from that wee tiny step counter. The picture in the middle is just a photograph of the floor book. And I'm a big advocate for floor books. As much as technology can help us do lots of wonderful things, the children still need somewhere that they've got ownership of, to be able to make, to be able to go there instantly, not relying on batteries being charged or, whatever else. They've always got it right there. So the setting had their member of staff would have had a mobile phone, whether it was the settings phone or the staff's phone, I'm not sure, but it was part of the risk assessment that you carry the phone, and they used the map app on it to track their journey, so they were able to then print that off, pop it in the floor book when they got home or back to the setting, and there was lots of discussion about the route that they took, where they crossed roads, what different landmarks that they saw, whether it was uphill or downhill, and where could they go differently next time. And that would be great, again, for using next time to revisit, to do your risk assessment before you go out on that walk as well. Then over on the right, you just got some good old just free play, exploring the photo function or the camera function on the mobile device, taking different close-ups of each other, different expressions, and then, adding, whatever layers and filters and things like that on it in photo booth. And the kids in the back, now I don't think I've got the video, or I've maybe showed you already, but they were the kids that were using the action camera that they had clipped on, and they were scoring goals and then going back inside and replaying the footage on the big interactive screen, to really scrutinise each other's football skills and to talk about who was offside and all sorts of things that I didn't really understand. But it turned out one of the child's, or one of the kids, their parent was like a videographer for a Scottish Premier League football club, so they were, they had all the lingo. So lots of really nice examples there of learning with and through, okay, thinking they're learning about that piece of technology, but it's opening up so much more. Okay, a few more examples here. Again, QR codes for independence, and I can't, stress enough that the content that they're accessing is their content as well, which is quite nice. Not something that I really did sort of prior to 2019, before I joined this team. We would always use, it's always external content, and the children are our best teachers, aren't they? So the example we have here is their recipe, their sort of instructions for making dough. They had, at the bottom left here, they had the brick corner, a big block area, and the QR codes, I think one took you to like a building site, sort of linked video, but the other one was them. It was footage of them building in that building corner, which was really quite nice, and then obviously provoked further building. And then just a good old practical use of a timer. Somebody was waiting on something cooking or baking, and then it gave them the visual, they could see the countdown, and then the audio there as well. So, really making learning visible. So we said a wee bit there about sustainability at the beginning, and that would be underpinned, by everybody doing a wee bit. So that means that everybody's sort of upskilling, and we've said, think small, achieve everyday manageable and achievable goals, because we want everybody to develop confidence. There is a lot, the workload, there's a lot going on, and you don't want to make this a negative experience, because we know that there's so many great uses of technology, to make our spaces and our experiences so engaging for the children. So how can we do this without weighing ourselves down? Okay, so I've got some really small examples there. Oh no, hold on, I don't want that. I don't know if you saw that come up there. It was my laptop saying it was doing a security update. Great timing. So we've got like a talking button just to give the audio to match the visual of washing hands. Some really simple sort of fairy lights there in a sort of calm, sensory corner. We've got the almost like talking buttons, but it's on a bigger wall pocket, and then they're interchangeable. So if you have maybe children with a visual timetable that need that wee extra bit of support, or it might be, children are retelling a story. It might be their own photos, it might be their own drawings. Again, shout out to outdoor play that are waterproof, tough covers, so things can go outside, particularly on a rainy day, and that example was the children had researched, they'd been out somewhere and they had saw there was artwork by Andy Goldsworthy, so it was all your lovely natural stuff. I'm trying to think where they were, can't remember, but anyway, there was an event somewhere, and they then came back to the nursery and didn't have any books that had his work in it, of course, so online, doing a search to find different images of pieces of work that he'd created that they were really interested in, and then they were going to go out into their own garden to have a wee look for bits and pieces of natural materials that they could use to try and recreate similar. But of course they couldn't remember by the time they got outside what they needed, so they needed a visual shopping list almost. So the photos were on the iPad, and we took them outside to help them find, the leaves, their sticks, their petals, whatever it might. Probably petals that day, it looked like it was pouring rain, so whatever they found, it would have been really soggy, I would imagine. And then get help where we can. All right, so if you have sort of links with your associated schools, if you do things like the buddies for the P6s and then the P1s coming up, what can they do to help you? Okay, so this example here is about the buddies, the P6s, supporting the wee ones to create a vlog of the nursery setting, but they needed a bit of help because they were using, the action camera, and they needed a wee bit of help to start and stop and things like that. So it was very much the nursery children's video, but they had support to work the technology from the older children. So they were making a video about the nursery for the newbie ones that were coming up to start. So yeah, keep an eye out who can help out. If you've got sort of ongoing visitors that come in, maybe extended work experience, parent helpers as well, as long as you have your discussions, and I'm sure you would, about child protection and GDPR and all of that, making sure that whatever's on the camera is returned and things like that. Then get a help, because it can be difficult, trying to do all of that, especially when it comes to editing video footage as well. So that's where the older kids came in great as well, because they had more a sense of, what makes it interesting and what makes it not so interesting, and if there's a big long pause where a child's thinking, or gets sidetracked and goes and does something else, then they knew that was where we could stop it and then add on the next wee chunk of video. So yeah, I would say wherever you can, get that help. And this is just a wee example of a clip from a report. This one's Ferry Dean, it says there at the bottom, but just have a wee look at what they said about the setting culture. So it really kind of sums up the picture that I just showed you, which is a completely different setting. Stop a wee minute and let you have a read. There's loads of practical examples there, but the P7 digital buddies were such an asset because, you know, if you've got staff members or colleagues that are really quite apprehensive or anxious about using technology, you know, having a primary school buddy come in and support that learning is so much less daunting than going, you know, to a CLPL session or joining something online. So it's a really nice way to sort of up the sort of confidence in your staff team as well, but through the children. And families, carers as well, you know, supporting that learning too. It's a huge benefit of digital technology is being able to enable that communication and collaboration. So a lot of, you know, what you might be doing is reaching families that you maybe wouldn't see every day. So, you know, your families that maybe you maybe have grandparents doing drop off and pick up, or childminders and things like that. It's really quite, you know, hard to catch some parents and carers. You know, you've got families in the forces, families that work away. Again, this is a really, really nice way of being able to include them in, you know, all the life and ethos of the setting. So the example there again is just a wee simple QR code, and that was taking the families to, was it the, oh, it tells you, it says it on there, under the sea learning. So it was a sway. So it was like they had their floor book, but then they also had the digital version with their videos. But what was really nice about this is in the floor book, they would put a QR code to the sway, and then in the sway they would have photos of the floor book pages. So it meant there was no, you know, nobody was duplicating, typing up things that were in the floor book. Just simply took pictures and stuck it in, so nobody was missing out anything anywhere. And then we mentioned about you might have work experience students coming in. You might have, and this was a sort of one-off, just shut my door, my dog's still mad. This was a one-off, and this actually came on the back of this Settings Digital Schools Award feedback. So they were awarded, but one of the bits of feedback was that, you know, you've got good partnership links with your primary school, but what about your secondary school? No, we don't really have you know, anything. There's nothing really happening like that. So it had us thinking, and we had a wee meeting with the head teacher and thought, you know, how could we go about this? And first off, we thought, well, we need a wee bit of support with video editing, you know, like making it much nicer, much more polished than it is. So we were invited to go up, and some of the, I think the third year pupils, I can't quite remember, they were going to work with us, and it was like the old Windows, the video editing programs. It was ages ago. But again, it saved money, you know, because we went up and we were released, we got to go up in school time, and they were released out of class as well. And then that was great for their CV, you know, for doing a bit of training. And then it was great for us as well, because like I mentioned, it takes away that kind of the scariness of, you know, going to, say, I don't know, somewhere like one of the Google offices or something, or one of the Google decided to trial extended work experience opportunities. So we might have had, you know, when they come down for a week, and they maybe think they want a wee career in childcare. So we'd already had that going. I think that was twice a year. But there was some pupils identified that, maybe weren't quite engaging as well as they could be, or they were just, needing a wee bit, might be a wee bit more sort of nurture, a wee bit more support for building their confidence up. So there was a few different pupils identified, and they got to come down, it's like 2 afternoons a week. So they were getting the experience of being in a nursery and, working with the children. But one of their tasks was that they needed to help us to support the children in capturing their learning. So this was sort of at the time the shift between the paper journals and going to the digital ones. So, that's what they were helping us do, which was, hugely beneficial for us, but at the same time giving them that experience too. So we mentioned already, safe and responsible use for all at the same time. You can see these pictures here. They're pretty old. Safer Internet Day has been on the go now for, I think, is it 14 years or something? I don't know, I'll have to double check that. I should know. But not just your events like Safer Internet Day, it's the ongoing practical advice. Okay, so like things like putting things that need charged, in the appropriate charging place. If you have technology that's not waterproof, where should it not go? Okay, where is it best not going? At the time, this was linked to the Shinari characters, but you might want now to transfer that and link that to some more your risk assessment elephant from the Care Inspectorate. We do have Safer Internet Day coming up. That is on the 10th of February, but we're having a wee session coming up before that, just to let you know how you can get your setting involved and what resources are out there. Now, this year's theme's based on, or it's called Smart Tech Safe Choices, Exploring Safe and Responsible Use of AI. So I don't know how much I would, spend time doing that with early level learners, but what I will talk about in that is the resources, and there's sort of 2 main resources from COP Education and ChildNet that I would definitely use with the younger learners. So the, developmentally appropriate stories, covering sort of everyday scenarios that could end up in risk. Oh no, hold on. I am still here. Um, 3 seconds. Right, I thought you had lost me. There's a driver update thing coming up, and my screen went completely blank, so I was just about to jump onto another phone, but I can see I'm still there. If I disappear, Pam, put a message in the chat. Dear me. Yeah, so we're going to do a sort of wee pre-session on that, just to sort of explain, well, what does Safer Internet mean? How does it impact my learners? And what are the resources? What can I use, to help them understand these messages, but in a sort of child-friendly way? And then we've also got Cyber Scotland Week. That's coming up at the end of February. So this year it's the 23rd to the 28th of February. Just a few seconds, my screen's gone blank again, honest to goodness. But again, we've got some support sessions coming up for that. Again, the theme, it's a bit old for us. It's can't hack it. So, we'd be thinking more definitely for older learners. But again, we have some developmentally appropriate resources. The Bongles and the Crafty Toys, you've probably heard about them, that really help wee ones to understand the importance of having passwords and passcodes, or even just becoming aware of passwords and passcodes. If you don't want to wait until then, we've got the recordings from last year, so we've got those there, and I'll send you the links to all of these. I'm just going to share a couple more report highlights here from Glenbrae, and hope that my laptop doesn't close. Okay, so this one was Glenbrae, Inverclyde, and oh, my slides aren't moving, are they? Just a wee second. Fantastic. Can you still hear me? Yes, you can. Right, I just realised that my slides aren't moving. I am so sorry. I'm just going to make sure I can stop this update. Very, very annoying. It was already started this morning. So yeah, it'll be comforting to find that people in the technologies team at Education Scotland also have off days with technology, I'm sure. Let me try again. So sorry my slides didn't move on there. Right. So I think we were here, weren't we? Let's see. Okay, so we were on the Safer Internet Day slides. I spoke a wee bit about that. Everything that I cover is completely free and available online. If you want to take part in Cyber Scotland Week as well, so this is a much bigger event and it brings people and sectors together to just really share knowledge about becoming cyber resilient. The theme is a wee bit older. As I said, the theme is Can I Hack It? Might not, be appropriate for early level, certainly, but we do have resources that we can use. So we've got the bongles and the crafty crows that help children become aware of passcodes and passwords, which is one of the first steps of cyber security, or it's certainly one of the first steps that we can have the discussions about with the younger learners, because it's something you can see, it's something you can touch, so visual and concrete learning. So that's a 2-part session, so we've got that coming up and it will be recorded. If you don't want to wait, we have the recording there from last year, so it'll be very similar information. The only difference will be that the Safer Internet Day theme and the materials will be slightly different. But if I'm being really honest, if I was a practitioner, I probably wouldn't be using them. I would be sticking to the CEOP education and the ChildNet resources and their stories. And you'll see why when you go in and have a wee look yourself, you'll see why. It's things like the slide decks for 3-year-olds and things, whereas the others have animations and little digital ebooks and things you can flick through. And the same with Cyber Scotland Week, there's also a recording there. And we've got loads of those sessions coming up in March as well. So we've got bongos read-alongs for the children, we've got Gaelic read-alongs, bongos read-alongs, we've got additional support needs read-alongs with Call Scotland, so loads of visuals. So yeah, all the links are there on the slides. Okay, so back to where I thought I was. Glenbrae and Inverclyde in 2022. So this is a wee snippet about setting culture from their report. Maybe slightly outdated now with Twitter and X. I'm not sure, who's using what now. But you can see all the different sort of methods, to make sure parents and families were involved in everything that was going on. But alongside that, they provided really clear guidelines, and I think that's important, just to make sure all your families are really understanding what's happening. You'll have your overarching, your council, your Renfrew, or your setting, your company, sort of photography policy and things like that. But it's just to make sure, if you are using something like a Facebook or, a blog, that the families understand what that is and what you'll be sharing on it and who can see it. We always tried to make sure we had a little guide that went along side the council photography permission, just to make sure that parents and carers understood exactly, where everything was going. This one's Glenwood, this one's Glasgow in 2022. And remember, all these reports, I've got them in a team, so if you can access the Glow team, I can share them with you. If you can't, can, let me know and I can share that folder with you. So that you can share it out, because they're all, they've all got permission to be shared, so they're all there.
That's me back.
Hiya.
Hiya.
You,
Sorry, what was that bit of
nearly,
folder I missed
you
that?
nearly lost me as well. My laptop started doing all these
No
updates.
way.
It's like, oh no, and I thought I was gone, and then I heard my voice, then I was back, but the slides weren't moving. But we got it there, so it's so comforting to see people in the technologies and digital teams have problems like this.
True, absolutely.
Yeah, so I was just saying, all the reports are uploaded into that Teams site within Globe. If people can't access Globe, I'm not 100% sure who's coming from where.
They should have some access to it, yeah.
Okay, great. Because
So,
if not, I can share the folder with you and you can download it. Yeah, and then send it out that way.
Perfect.
So we're just looking at some different wee snippets from the reports. So this one here, interestingly, was they had a paperless ethos in their setting. That might be relevant, but again, just think about all your families. Would that be appropriate for everybody? Do some people prefer, a piece of paper? Do some people maybe need a wee bit of help, with translation and things like that? So it's what works for one, doesn't necessarily work for all. And I'm thinking some grandparents, not being ageist here, but some older people that might not be able to do the QR codes, or just people that have never used QR codes before, so they might prefer the piece of paper. They can stick it up on the fridge with the magnet, and then it's got all the dates and things up there. So I suppose it comes down to knowing your family as well, like your children, doesn't it, and asking what best meets their needs. This one was from Borough Early Learning and Childcare Centre in Scottish Borders in 2024. This one was interesting because on the particular app, this Showbie app that they use, they have like an open communications channel, and all parents could, type on it and everybody could see it. And I first thought, but what if somebody types something, not very nice or something not appropriate? And they said, no, we've sat with all our families and we've explained, what this is for, the benefits of it is. But if there is something, that you want to discuss or raise, there's another channel for it, because that is, this is for discussing the children's learning. So I thought that was interesting as well, because any sort of experience I've had of things like that, I always made sure it was either the comments were off or they were, checked to be moderated, because I was always terrified somebody wrote something rude. But I suppose again, it's about, that, isn't it, mutual respect, and giving your families that opportunity. I suppose it really just comes down to time as well, doesn't it? If you did want to moderate comments, whose responsibility is that going to be? So it might be safer just to not have them on, or it might be something that you want to trial. And then a final thought here, just before we have a wee look at the example of evidence that one of the settings submitted. I really like this. So this is a quote that was an article in Nursery World. It really kind of sums up what we've been saying, doesn't it? So, we're not a technology first approach, it's a considered approach on what is going to meet the needs of the children best. So I really like that. That's a really nice, sensible article, because sometimes when you see anything with the screen time in it, you can, have all that moral panic. I'm just going to share a different screen with you now. Core review. Sure you can see that. Yep. So just a wee example here from Quarry View, and hopefully next year, the next cohort that I'm working with, it will be you pieces of evidence that you have submitted that I'm then sharing with the new people. So please keep that in mind as well. Right, so again, lots of just photographs, screenshots. Okay, it wasn't taking them, loads and loads of time to sit and write this all out. It was here, simple enough. If the validators had any questions, then they would dig. So it's almost like, think about the validators coming into the setting. If they were doing a walk around, what would they be looking at? What would they want to see? They aren't able to do that now physically. They can't do the face-to-face. They will do the online call, so try and give them as much of a flavour as possible. So loads to look at to give them a real feel for what's going on. Video footage if possible, because then you see it, you hear it, you really then get a feel for what's happening. But what you don't need to do is tidy things up. What's ever in the floor book or what's ever up on the wall, screenshots and pop it in. Now you'll see I've shared this in particular sway before, so there is duplications, and that's fine, because as we said, it does all intertwine, just like each area of the curriculum intertwines at early level. We're never doing anything in isolation. So things can be repeated, things can be reused in the different sections of the evidence submission. Really simple. There's the Teams landing page. Let's take a photo of that, because there's all the different teams that we have. What does it look like inside them? Here's all our files. And as long as there's nothing sensitive in there. And then things like there's seesaw, the groups within it, they're sharing, they're sharing their online journal and how that all works. They've just scrubbed out the names, and that's absolutely fine to do that as well. So some of this you'll see, absolutely could have been in curriculum, or it could have been in leadership. Where did that go? And it's really just, it's up to yourself where you think it best fits. So they're all going to be very different. And this is particularly nice. They've got their celebrating learning as well. And what we hope to see in future ones is not just the children celebrating learning, but members of staff as well. If you have, learned a new skill, or if you've set up a different experience somewhere in the playroom, indoor or outdoor, celebrate that, record that. Again, back to cyber resilience and internet safety. So that appears in every section in here, and it's just photographs or screenshots from things that they have engaged with online, and then some evidence of that actually happening in the playrooms. I drew Proud Pig. He's sad because they sent a funny photo of him. So that comes from one of the ChildNet stories, the DigiDuck stories, and it's about DigiDuck receiving an email, okay, and the email is a photograph of his friend, the pig, I'm sure, and somebody's, added some sort of filter or stuck something silly on, and then he has to think for a minute, what's he going to do, and he laughs, and then he shares it. So then everybody, is quite upset with him, because Proud Pig finds out about this, and then there's a birthday party and he doesn't get invited. So, it's all it's very sort of real scenarios, but it's very cleverly worked, developmentally appropriately into, scenarios that the children would be able to understand and engage with. There's another one as well about the reliability of information, and it's about DigiDuck again on his laptop, and he thinks he's met someone famous online. So he goes to explore, after a conversation back and forward, he goes to explore, but he doesn't go alone, he goes with his teacher and the class, and they go down to the assembly hall, and it turns out to be the head teacher. So again, it's it's not stuff that's going to give children nightmares, but it's still planting those seeds. So some really nice resources. And then the bongles and the crafticles, as we mentioned before, is our sort of only resource for cyber resilience for early level at the moment, and that really reinforces why we have passcodes and passwords in the world around us. And we've got loads of those sessions coming up as well. So I'm just going to stop that one there. So that message come up there again, Pam, but I was able to hit postpone this time. No, do not, do not. So how is everyone feeling? Hopefully that was quite reassuring again, that, you know, it's just kind of being able to capture what you do in your setting, you know, what your beliefs are, knowing your why. And it ultimately always comes back to, you know, giving your learners the best experiences, and you know, supporting them through different types of digital technology, the learning with, the learning through. It might be more about the spaces that you set up, you know, to engage children to take part, and also how you can support your families as well. So where does technology come in to support that family engagement? Is it more the accessibility stuff? Is it the communication stuff? Or do you have families or particular parents that can support? You know, can they come in during stay and play, or if you do any sort of volunteering sessions, maybe they're going to come in and read some of these stories about cyber resilience and internet safety. There's loads of different things that you could do, and I'm sure you can already think of thousands yourself as well. It's just, I suppose, taking a breath and taking stock of, you know, what are we doing? Okay, I'm going to take a wee note of that, and I'm going to put it in either this section of the framework or that section of the framework, wherever you decide to upload it to. And then after that, you can then go on to the Digital Skills, or you've maybe Digital Skills Award site, you've maybe already done that yet, or got your account. And you'll see when you go on that when you click on the sort of drop down box to put your evidence in, it gives you the whole big screed of, you know, what this area of the framework means and what the resources are, and it can look a wee bit overwhelming. That's some feedback that we've shared with them. So if you just scroll down till you get to the sort of upload a file box, and you can just put the same link in on each part. And if you want a couple of, you know, wee sentences to go along with it, but as long as you've got lots for them to look at, they will then ask you more questions during the validation call. All right, any questions? Has anybody got one?
Just waiting on questions. I was just going to pop in the chat the dates of the next meetings.
Good idea.
There we go. And someone's popped something in the chat.
And I will just pop in I've got the link to the evaluation and the slides, but I will send them on too. And you could just get the QR code. Okay. Right. Okay. So, Pam, are you using Adobe and Glow?
Yeah, we've got Adobe Express within Glow. Yeah.
That would be my go-to place. Do you need some support with Adobe and Glow? Will I look for some of the links actually that I've got? I'm sure there's snapshot tutorials on there already for that, isn't there?
There is, and there's guided lessons and everything that you can have a look at. You know, so my go-to is like create the video in Adobe Express, and then you can share the link that way. But if you're specifically looking for QR codes, then you can also share it as a QR code. So it's really straightforward. But yeah, if you've got any specific links to hand, Eva, or that you can send me, I can ping them on.
Absolutely will do. But no, you're quite right. Avoid these paid for services as well, because you don't know, you know, when they're going to cut it off. You don't know where your data's been stored and things like that. But as long as you keep everything within Glow,
we're okay. We also have, we call it our walled garden. I'm working on a wee visual based on the stuff that I've been doing with Martin and your team, Eva. But also, so one of the things, because we are also a Google authority, you can create vids in Google Vids, and then you can also immediately share the QR code out that way as well.
That sounds good. Yeah, that might take out a few extra steps then. That sounds really straightforward, yeah. Try that.
So I'll try and find some guidance because Google Vids is quite new. I'll need to look, but we can, as a Google authority, you can definitely use Google Vids. Who was asking the question? I'm just checking out. Oh, you've all got access to Glow, so that's not an issue. Even our I'm going to say partner, and I know that's the wrong phrase now, but you know who you are. Establishments, funded providers, there we go, that's the word. Yeah, so but I'll look and see what I can find on Google Vids, but it's very straightforward. Also what we're doing, and I was just trying quickly to pull this up as well, with all of the work that we've been doing with Eva here, we're working on, because we are a Google authority, we do love a notebook LM, which I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of that today. But one of the things, excuse me, but one of the things we've been doing is we've been taking all the recordings that you've been doing, Eva, and we've been turning them into one of the infographics. So we're working on a wee kind of early years pack that we're going to be sharing. So I'm just going to show my screen. So this is where we've got to so far with all of the videos that Eva has done for us and very kindly allowed us to record. So it's got a nice wee kind of visual that is created. Now, it's not perfect, so we're still working on it, but just to give you a kind of idea. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. Yes, that is amazing. So Google LM creates the graphics as well now?
Yeah, so what we did was we used your sources, your videos that we'd recorded in Digital ELC, and then we just put them in, and it mentions the bit about, so we did 3 different ones. So there's 3 different types you can do, and that's one I just showed you, apologies. So you can go from simple to more complex. This is the most complex one. But I do like the fact it talks about all the stuff that you've said, the wall displays, what counts, don't create extra work, digital portfolios, all the different places where we can get it. It's not perfect, as I say, there's still a couple of camera instead of camera and things like that.
That makes it more me, the way I speak.
And then there's a third one. So yeah, we're just working on that. But I just thought the people on the, I really like practical ways.
Oh, definitely. A wee visual. Distinct statements. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, and that's just
I
basically.
need to go and check this out.
I know.
Explode the create a podcast from a document or the mind map from a document. So right, I need to. That's my CLPL to-do list now.
Yeah, I'm loving the fact that it can now do a wee kind of video guide for you, which might be, I'm thinking, maybe I've lost you guys, and apologies, but it's just something I'm always on with these things. We were talking a lot about the cyber resilience stuff and pulling all that together into a nice wee kind of video format for your parents. That could be really useful, but I have loads of guidance on Digital ELC about using AI and getting started with Notebook LM, so I'm not going to say any more about it in this, because that's not what we're here to talk about. But there are things that can help you, which I think would be really useful. But yeah, we're working on a toolkit, so trying to get pulled together an early years toolkit. But that was just to give you a wee flavour, and that's just the ones that we've done so far. Eva, obviously, we'll keep adding to it because we didn't have today's on it.
Brilliant. Well, my laptop just, even though I said postpone, it's gone off. So I'm now on the iPad, 2% battery, and I'm holding the charger.
Yeah.
The charging port. So if no one else has any questions, we'll end the call just now. I've popped the links in the chat already, but I'll send the follow-up email, Pam, with them so people have got them once the chat disappears as well.
I'll send, no worries. Mrs. Manning, is what available now? Is you talking about that wee infographic? Because no, the answer is it's not available right now because we were finishing the series, so we've got another session to go, and then we'll create it and we'll tidy it up so it is perfect and we don't have strange spellings and things like that in it. But it's coming soon.
Well, that's it. It looks like a really good document, and I thought so that we can have that as well.
That's the plan. That's the plan for our staff toolkits. We'll get it sent out. Brilliant. When we're ready.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Remember to fill out your evaluation.